We won't spend long on this because I know we got to keep it tight, but part of why I was saying I was coming down out of it was today I was just sort of assessing everything I had in there, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the next phase, which is to build out the shelves, reorganize the whole studio, but also to purge stuff that is not going to be around. So I went through all the VCRs because I have 3 that I needed to sell, and then like 5 that I needed to get rid of because they're not working. I don't want to fix them. I don't know how to fix them. So I just threw up on Facebook Marketplace for free 5 VCRs that need I don't know what's wrong with them, need repair. So now that I'm like getting rid of stuff and it's not just selling it on eBay, I'm like, okay, it's beginning. The next phase of this process.
Committed to the dump.
Yeah, getting this stuff out of here, and now taking all of the treasures I've acquired and the tools I've put together. I got this old Sennheiser microphone from a thrift store, and I'm like, I bet you this thing's busted and not working. I recorded some audio. I had to do a ton of shit to just be able to hear it, but it totally has a cool sound to it, like a distant, weird, disembodied kind of sound. I'm like, that's going to be great for some voiceovers.
Yeah.
It had been a golden afternoon, and I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.
All right, what are we doing?
All right. So, topic I came with today. Using shitty tools because they're more fun.
I just bought another one.
So I feel like this one kind of works well into our worldview a little bit. So
they're more fun. What's your example of the shitty tool that you bought?
Oh, dude, there's so many shitty tools that I use. I mean, first of all, it's completely subjective on where you see
define
shitty.
Shit.
Yeah, and like also what your defined objective is.
Because shitty could be like it's actually like a low quality product. Shitty could be that
and
it's
I don't necessarily
more
mean low quality product into like, you know, a lot of the quote unquote shitty tools I use are probably well made.
Okay.
I mean, well,
but it's
you like, you know, that, you know, if I have this obsession with like quality engineering or whatever. So, but shitty in terms of there's something else available that does more.
It does more, does it faster, does it easier.
Better, faster, stronger, whole thing. Ooh. And so I started to break this down a little bit. And I guess first we'll get like we'll kind of react to that and define our terms here. But I started to break this down. I'm like, okay, what is like this? This is coming from like we talked a little bit, but there's like a hedonism to it. Mm-hmm. Like there's almost like a pleasure over utility. Right here I wrote like Epicurean philosophy. You've got like absurdism. Like there's no inherent like meaning to anything, so you bring your own.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. Do we think of hedonism as a negative thing overall?
So hedonism, that's actually a good.
Because what I was getting at was, and pleasure to me is sort of a.
I define like this is hedonistic to me. Like what we're doing, like doing this podcast, like she's gonna try to go on there, but she can't.
Oh, go this way, puppy. Don't break the trap.
Like I'm not necessarily talking. I think in the pre-show I was like, you know, we're not talking about cocaine and orgies.
Yeah.
Or, you know, we're not talking about like doing heroin because it's the most pleasure we can derive from a current moment. But maybe like roll that back just a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not talking about like a complete euphoric
drug
experience, but just putting pleasure over predefined utility, putting pleasure as the.
And I think I have,
and we've talked about it before too. I think even on this of just almost approaching. I think we've approached it from more of a business perspective of like, you and I have talked before about, you know, what if we started a design company that didn't use computers? What if we started a production company that only used film?
Yep.
Like that is this idea kind of embodying itself in, you know, a business model or whatever. But yeah.
The only reason I asked is I have really grown personally strong to defining things as pleasure and joy. And when I hear you talk about
Is
this,
there a difference between pleasure and joy for you?
100%.
Break that.
Pleasure for me is all centered around ego. Joy is centered around selflessness.
Okay.
Now, it's not pure selflessness,
So
but
that's not
it's
necessarily
the dominant trait. And so joy to me is the highs. This is a ripoff from a George Lucas thing. George Lucas has this great speech. I'll put it in the show notes about the difference between pleasure and joy. And that was like one of those moments we talked about in other episodes. You read something, you watch something, and it changes how you see the world. Right. When he defined the difference between pleasure and joy, I was like, holy shit, I see it. And I want to seek, more often than not, I want to seek joy in my life, not pleasure. So joy being more selfless, the highs aren't as high, the lows aren't as low. It's a little bit more like this, whereas pleasure is this. Yeah. You chase. Joy is, there's more discipline to it. There's more absorption of it. It's less intense. So when I think of using shitty tools to make work, I see myself as embracing the joy of the process, the craft of using it, even if there is a tool out there that's faster, cheaper, more efficient, whatever. We are embracing joy. So the reason I asked if hedonism is negative, because I associate hedonism with pleasure seeking, then I was wondering, what would the word be for someone who seeks joy? The joy of something. I don't know.
I don't know if there's necessarily if there is that separation when I don't know how useful the separation between an idea of joy and pleasure would be in this case. But I mean, pleasure, I guess what's not clear to me is where do you draw the line? There's plenty of things that I do that probably are more self-serving, that also you could, work into that classification of joy. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if there's a clear enough, separation between those two in my mind. I definitely get doing, what did I define it in pre-show? I was things that provide pleasure without harming people.
Right. I think too. I think we can certainly use the word pleasure in this instance. For me, my brain goes to pleasure starts to push into a place where rational thought starts to break down for the chemical emotional benefits of feeling good.
Yeah, and I guess I wasn't coming at it with that.
Yeah, and we're getting into the weeds here.
No, it's good to define these things though.
And the only reason was because when you throw out the word hedonism, I think culturally we typically think of that word as a negative. Oh, they're a hedonist or you're hedonistic or whatever. You're
the biblical view of the word. Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean that our listeners or you are thinking of that negative connotation. That's a meaning that I apply to it. And so clarifying, are we talking about this from a place of a positive point of view, a productive point of view, a healthy point of view, or are we talking about this as pleasure seeking with shitty tools because rational thought is gone and you just want to feel good?
Yeah. I think I'm definitely approaching it from the point of just maybe the absurdist view is better. Hey, there's no reason to do things a certain way, or there is no predefined structure to anything, so you can kind of bring your own, provide your own, build your own adventure.
Yep.
So maybe that is a more useful kind of framework to view this from, because it's using a film camera. Mm-hmm. All right, you're being annoying. Go bother Matt.
I want dinner, Dad.
Oh, it is about that time, isn't it?
I want to eat.
Go lay down.
If you feed me, I'll go away.
Go lay down. Go lay down. Yeah, I think using film when digital would probably work faster, but then it's also kind of redefining what those outcomes are going to be, or what those outcomes need to be. Mm-hmm. So I mean, maybe we take a step back. when I say using shitty tools because they're more fun, like what is the raw response to that?
First thought was, and again, I'm Mr. Pop Culture, right? Everybody just, and this ties into George Lucas, everybody loved when the sequels to Star Wars came out and they went back to shooting on film. They used puppets. Everything wasn't CG. They kind of embraced the, do it in camera point of view, right? That's what I think of, and I think about in my own process. How do you get satisfaction from exposing actual film? How do I challenge myself to take that to the next level and not only develop my own film and learn the craft of developing your own film, even though it's way easier to send a roll off to Midwest Film Company and have them do it and send me the log scans. Maybe there's a real fulfillment in doing it and then making your own prints. Really the entire craft of photography from start to finish versus making the photo and then having somebody else doing what you could argue is the hard part, the more time-consuming part, the more expensive part, buying your own chemicals, all your stuff, whatever. There's an estate sale this weekend that has a shitload of film developing tools, by the way.
Somebody who's developed a lot of that shit sucks. I will happily send that off.
But
I'll do the darkroom. I won't do the...
The other example I'll give is...
Color only. I can't do color. Black and white is my... Yeah.
I've been really inspired by a couple of YouTube channels that use voiceover and they use some effects on the vocals. And I sit there and I go, I can kind of reverse engineer that. And, maybe there's some extra compression going on. There's a filter there that, kind of makes it sound like they're talking out of a distant place, whatever. I don't really want to look for the filters and the plugins and all that stuff. I'm going to get a bunch of blank audio cassettes when I go to a thrift store or estate sale. I'm going to stockpile all that stuff. I'm going to get this old microphone, like a Sony microphone that I found, a tape recorder, like a battery-powered old Panasonic tape recorder, plug in the mic, put a cassette in, and I'm going to record that. And then I'm going to put a mic on that, play it back, and record that for the voiceover.
Yeah.
It's way slower. It's more time-consuming. It's clunky.
There's no logical argument for it in the sense of...
Yeah, because I can record my voiceover directly into Final Cut Pro. I can put one filter on and probably get something that has the same general effect on the audience.
You could probably match it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably get...
But what's the fun in that?
100%, yeah.
I want to get an old tape recorder and old cassettes and
it's funny because
I'm
sure that there's some people listening who... I think this is always funny. Like, you see this on a lot of film videos. If you'll watch somebody that's shooting film or shooting medium format, it's like, or shooting especially older digital cameras with different sensors, like,
yeah,
well, you could totally just do that.
Yeah, you can just make a Lightroom preset and you.
Well, I agree with that. It's like there's two worldviews that are conflicting there.
Yeah,
and it's one person wants to have it just done.
Yep.
They want it to be all they want to do is the experience of clicking the shutter and then having it. And one person and both are assuming that they're seeing eye to eye. Mm-hmm. When in reality, it's like, look, you guys both appreciate different parts of the process.
Right. That's exactly right.
And I think that's something that's core here is some people are going to listen to us say using shitty tools because they're more fun. And they're just going to be like, why would you ever? And it's like, well, your North Star might be efficiency.
Right.
But this is for one, think about the idea of efficiency is not the North Star.
Right.
It's a North Star of many. Mm-hmm. And you can choose what that is. So think of it from you are looking at one way, step back and you can look at it from, 7 different lenses, but then also realizing that other people might see it So you might sit there and be like, I don't understand this. I don't understand how that person, well, they might also look at you and say, I don't understand this, but it doesn't mean that that's not the best thing for each of those people to be doing.
And I had somebody in my life, especially living in Los Angeles and going through post-production who, certainly had great creative instincts and made some really cool stuff. But this person, my buddy Nick out in LA, really focused on efficiency. reducing clicks, making the process as streamlined as possible. You know, a lot of his argument was the more tools I find that make me get to that result sooner and faster, the more time I spend at home with my family. The quicker the client here's the thing that makes them feel better about the show that they're putting together, all of that stuff, which totally makes sense. And I think now that I'm making work, you know, that work was always being made for someone else.
Yeah.
We were collaborating to help an artist achieve their overall vision for their live concert, and we were making things in service of that vision.
It doesn't make sense to shoot it on film.
That
if you're shooting a
or
concert,
you just literally don't have time.
It doesn't make sense to run it through like
yeah,
you know, some audio filter or something.
A lot of times you don't have time for that stuff. And now that, you know, I'm making stuff for myself, I, you know, realize, well, I don't care if it's the most efficient. I want to record my voiceovers this way because it's ultimately going to have the vibe that the audience, I think, needs to experience. And I'm just going to step away from the work with an extra level of pride and joy in what the process was in making it. And so your priorities shift. And, you know, sometimes there's a dark side to it. For me, I do like to buy shit. I self-medicate with
Stuff.
with buying shit.
Yeah.
And like the rush of finding something that either solves a problem or helps me achieve a vision. And even if I'm frugal with it, I get it at an inexpensive price, whatever, that I pat myself on the back for that. But I'm like, ultimately I get a little dopamine hit when I show up at the estate sale and there's 6 blank, you know, audio cassettes or VHS tapes for $1. Like, I'm going to buy that. But, you know, over time, if you accumulate 200 of these things and you're never actually going to use them all, did you really need to spend $200 on all that stuff to get it, you know?
I think it's interesting and an important kind of point to make that a lot of people see things through a very commercial lens, and for good reason. I just remember, you know, go back 5-6 years when I was working, like just working with all these different production companies and going kind of full freelance. You tell anybody, oh yeah, I shoot film. Some people are like, oh, that's cool. But especially the ones that had been around for a while, maybe they did shoot film professionally back when that was the only thing available. The response I usually got was like, why do you do that?
Why?
And not in like a negative way.
Yeah.
But just in like a genuine, like, they only see things through efficiency and what's the quickest way and the most effective way. Like, they don't want to lose data, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we exposed 6 rolls of film and ruined a project in 1998. It's like, okay, I get it. I get why digital makes sense. But yeah, it's just important to be like, look, just because somebody gives you pushback and they're like, why doesn't make that the only option.
So question,
what?
Is the difference between someone who is compelled, attracted to, inspired to use shitty tools versus someone that wants efficient, simple, get the result quickly, etc. Is that the difference between an artist and someone who executes
Definitely
things?
not.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think there's plenty of people who
are artists, but they
just want the tools that I just think there's people that enjoy using different tools and there's some people that don't. I like lensing it through kind of I really do like the Camus idea of just absurd, everything's absurd. Like, you know, bring your own meaning, and if that's digital and it's efficiency and it's quickest from point A to point B, and that's what gets you fired up, run it.
Yeah, send it.
And if it's, you know, taking, you know, 3 hours to shoot and develop and darkroom a roll of film and scan and cool, send it. Everybody. I think I wish more people, I think at the end of the day, this is what I wish, is that more people looked at it as a fluid set of parameters that they can apply. Like they're allowed to think critically about, and they can apply their own reality to. You don't have to do things this way or that way because it's the most efficient or it's the most common. Figure out 10 different ways to do something and then choose the one that you feel, I don't want to say fits you the most, but that it almost is an equation of just like, am I having fun right now?
Yeah.
I am having fun right now.
Do I like this?
Then do that.
Yeah.
There's so many times, especially in, the last few months, like I try not to write on the computer anymore. I just go outside, sit on the porch with a notepad. Try to do my, for work.
Yeah.
Try to, if I'm,
I've been doing notepads too.
It's just go out and sit with a notepad or go walk around the block.
Yeah.
And think about it.
Yeah.
There's not, the end result is the end. If it gets done, it doesn't really matter how you get there with a lot of things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think, what did I write here? Play unconcerned with productivity. And then I said play mildly concerned with productivity. So that's an interesting concept of I don't ever want to say completely unconcerned with productivity because I do think at the end, unless you are completely on your own dime and you're just on your own timeline, you're probably trying to meet some kind of deadline, even if it's somewhat self-imposed. So maybe not unconcerned with productivity, but mildly concerned with productivity.
Yeah.
Where it's going to get, your videos still get done.
Yep.
They might take a little longer, but you're also not sitting in front of the light box.
Yes, the magic rectangle.
Yeah. What do you think about embrace the absurd and find joy in an irrational existence?
Yeah.
I think that's
my existence is pretty irrational at this point.
Yeah. Current moment in time.
Oh boy, is it ever. If I just think about my wife coming downstairs and she has a few times and just been like, whoa. I wish we gotta link I think I only have a member video, but we gotta show a picture or something of all the crap that I have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, I am really.
But are you having a good time?
The irrationality of it, because it really is fun. It is inspiring. It just, the overflow of ideas for stuff I can make. Again, something as simple as just a cool way to record a voiceover, all the way to, I can make a video about this. That would be really cool to show. Like a video about which old shitty microphone sounds the best or sounds the coolest, and record a voiceover with it. And I got this one at my grandpa's house. I got this one at a thrift store. I picked up this one at an estate sale. I've never used them before. I don't know how good they are. I don't even know what kind of microphone it is. Yeah. Let's just listen to it and see what sounds cool.
Go with it.
It's just fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am very much enjoying it, and and thought about that when shooting medium format, because I'm I got this big ass camera, the Connie Omega Rapid. The film, I had to watch this YouTube video because this camera, you load the film a very specific way. I had to watch it. This is a whole process. I can't remember the process, so I have to watch the YouTube video several times until I memorize how to do it with this camera. It's heavy. The shutter, the rangefinder. I'm this is just all signs point to, why the hell are you using this? Just get a Fuji medium format for $1,500 digital and call it good. And I'm I looked at those scans and I'm oh baby,
nope,
I'm all in.
Yeah,
all in. God, they look so good.
What do you if you had to draw a line between enjoyment and efficiency? Where do you draw that line? Does it depend on
Well, I'll give you an
with,
example.
with me, it depends on what's the intention of the project for sure. That's a big part of it. But
Well, I'll give you an example of a frustration that came out of shooting 120. I actually had my F1, my Canon F1, my SLR.
Yep, the take-up spool, right?
Well, so yeah, with the Rapid, I went back to Chicago because my grandma passed away, and I was going to photograph the inside of her house in medium format, every room of the house. And I go to load the film, and I'm like, you stupid, dumb moron. You forgot a take-up spool. And I had 3 other rolls of portrait. I had a 160 and 2 400s. And I'm like, these were $20 each. I could just burn a roll and pull the spool out of that. I'm like, the photography gods, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So I do submit and surrender. I know it's been a common refrain with me. I just go, you weren't supposed to take medium format today.
Yeah.
And I think the focal length, I forget, it's like between a 40 and a 50. I'm like, that's a really tough focal length to shoot house interiors anyway. But I could have used it for some detail shots. So I'm like, you got to use the F1 with the 28 millimeter. And I use the 50 a little bit on a few things. But I'm like, the grain's heavier. I'm shooting 250D Vision 3, so it's not as bad as like Kodak Gold or
with the layer peeled off the.
No, it's the film stock. So he does ECN 6 or whatever it is. Down at Midwest Film Co. So it's
legit. Yeah,
it's legit and it's beautiful and it's $12 a roll. For 36 exposures. So I will take that over Portra 400.
Portra 400 used to cost that much.
Yeah. Now
used to be cheaper than that.
Ultramax is $13 a roll at Walgreens. And
I haven't bought film in a long time.
Vision 3 is cheaper, so I'll take that. All right. So the other thing, when I visited the second time to Chicago this year, I went and I brought both cameras, the medium format and the F1. And I'm like, I'm going to get a portrait of my grandma, medium format and in 35. So Grandma, is it okay if I take a portrait? I just want you to sit there and look at camera, no smiling, no nothing. Line up the F1, snap, get the other one out. I'm like, you don't have to like do a portrait for this one because I was really just testing the camera, thinking if it works, I'm going to go back to my grandma's house and get more portraits of her in medium format. Of course, she passed away, so that's not possible anymore. But I took the 120, the medium format shot. I get them back from the scanner. F1 is completely out of focus. I'm like, what were you even doing?
Yeah.
How is it so badly out of focus? You're shooting at like, I was at a lower f-stop because it was morning interior. So I was probably shooting like f4, 5, 6. So not crazy, but I'm like.
What was your shutter speed?
Probably a 60th. I don't usually go below a 60th.
Maybe it was a little blur there then.
But I'm like, how is this?
Was it on a tripod?
It's not blur. It's not blur from movement. It's out of focus.
Gotcha.
I missed focus with it. Every other shot that morning on the F1, perfectly in focus.
Fine. Yeah.
Mostly because they were to infinity. So it's like, just infinity, you're good. I'm like, how the do you watch that?
Yeah.
So then I look at the 120 shot. When a rangefinder.
Oh, it's
sharp
it's
as
really
a tack.
good.
Shutter speed's a little low though, so Grandma had moved her hand, a little blurry hand,
Yeah.
and she's mid-speech, so she's like, kind of like this, like.
I don't think it's bad though.
No, it's you saw it.
Yeah.
So it's fine, but it's not what I would call a portrait because she's not, looking at. It's a portrait in the sense that it's of a person, but it's not to me what I had in my mind for a portrait I wanted of my grandmother.
Yeah.
So I'm kicking myself a little bit. So to go back to the thing you mentioned, I'm like, this fucking tool.
Yeah.
I didn't get the shot because now if I had my EOS R,
would have got the shot.
Would
have gotten 20 shots.
Would have got 20 shots. Would have fired them off. Sharp focus, autofocus. Would have latched onto her eyeball. Wouldn't have even had to think about it. But man, that 120 stuff looks good.
Yeah, it looks really good.
While the EOS R looks good, I'm bored of it. I'm just bored of that look.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the 120, I'm like, oh yeah, baby.
Get you fired up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for just also, the process, going through the process of shooting it, loading it, like, and we can step off of film here. Like we've both, typewriters.
Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, the original.
Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras.
Why are you shooting
I was like, man, I love how this camera looks so much that I want to build a rig that we can actually use for, like professional shoots. Yeah. I mean, you're not going to use it to shoot a feature film.
Yeah, typewriters though.
I mean, typewriters, pen and paper. You know, it's not as quick as typing something up or, you know, using ChatGPT, but
I love
dictionaries. Like I know, like, here's the great thing. I always make this argument, and we talked about this a little bit. I frequently make the statement that I think we live in the best time ever.
Yeah.
And then people react. There's usually a couple some people agree, some people don't care. Yep. That's probably the stance I agree with the most. And then but some people get upset about it. They're like, "Oh, we're not living in the, like, these things are so whatever." And I'm like, if you kind of, you know, frame your life with this idea of, you know, there's no point. That sounds so just negative, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but just you can kind of build things and like decide what, at least as an individual in your own life, I think it's a really good time to be alive because we can choose from, I mean, even in just American culture, you know, we've got 250 years roughly just about to go back and choose from. Yeah. Of what we want to, you know, what we want to do. And then, you know, you've got other cultures to choose from. You've got ideas that you can pull from. You've got easy access to all of these things. It's not like we are like, oh, well, because we live in the Midwest, we can't access these movies or these, right. Everything's accessible. It's just a pretty good time to be alive, especially when you're just trying to like pick and choose different eras of stuff. Yeah. Typewriters.
Yeah. Mixing it all together.
You're super high on VHS. I'm not a VHS fan, but I get it.
Yeah. I think a lot of people see me buying VHS and like, you're going to watch that? I'm like,
well, see, it's
I'm
funny.
Not gonna watch
it's
It's
funny.
just going to be there in the background. It's just a vibe.
And it's really funny because I have the same feeling about your VHS stuff that you get that I run into with some people when I say I use film. Yeah. Because exactly. Like my thought of VHS is like, well, why wouldn't you know? And I catch I'm not going to actually make this, like, I think it's cool. Yeah. Like, I'm not actually criticizing the choice to do that. But I do, you know, I'll be like, what? Man, VHS is a very, like, standard media. Yeah. You know, it degrades over time.
It's destructive to the artist's original vision of the film.
100%. Like film, you can do, you know, they've done 8K restorations of Hitchcock films. Yeah. They look gorgeous. They are the most perfect thing I've ever seen. It's like, it looks just as good as any digital film, you know, to my eye. Yeah. Obviously, you can tell it was shot on film, but it adds to it. It adds a character to it that it didn't have. But there's no, like, loss of information. Right. And with VHS, I'm always like, oh, well, you're kind of... But then, again, like, we choose to shoot this thing on a bunch of standard definition cameras. But, yeah, so I get it. It's just, you know, find what gets you pumped.
Yeah. And for me, you know, VHS is a multitude of things. It is, you know, obviously tapping into nostalgia and having watched so many movies on VHS, the sound that the VCR makes when it's playing, the look of the image on a standard definition CRT TV, you know, granted it's converted an aspect ratio from its original aspect ratio to fit a 4:3 aspect ratio, but the actual image on a standard def screen looks great. And the other thing too is, dude, some of those VHS, the box art on them and the graphics that they use, like this Manhunter VHS that I picked up, I'm just like, I have probably a dozen VHS tapes that I am going to set aside and I'm going to stare at them to figure out how to integrate these box designs and the font choices and the color choices into my work. Yeah. I don't know how it will manifest. I don't know where it'll show up, but I look at it and
it's interesting there because like you're building a design reservoir.
Yes, absolutely.
A reference library. Yes. That's completely unique to you. Yep. I can't get that by searching VHS covers on. I mean, I can get a bit of it. Yeah. But I'm not going to be able to get something as complete or as, you know,
especially those very cool early 80s, mid 80s VHS where the company that made the sleeve designed designed it, took a still from the film, picked the font. Like they didn't just take the movie poster and slap it on the box. It's a work of art, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's so inspiring to me to see that as someone who really likes graphic arts and graphic artists, but isn't one, but wants to touch it, wants to toe into
interact with it a little
and
bit,
learn. Like, okay, well, they did a drop shadow. Oh, I see. Like reverse engineer, like what the thinking was, how it worked, and get closer to that art form as well, even if it's not something that I exclusively want to do.
For sure.
But I want to improve that craft. And if I really had my way, I would be like, how do I get the machinery that they use to make this stuff to like make it the old way, not just open up Affinity Designer and
what I'm saying.
slap it together.
That's kind of where, one, I would almost make an argument that yes, it's incredibly inefficient to do, especially graphic design, to do it in that manner.
Yeah.
Think about this though. Like up until 1990, maybe, maybe a little bit earlier, but I mean, all of the design in the world was done completely analog.
Yeah.
So, yes, while it's highly inefficient, and yes, nobody is trained to do it like that, it's a massive differentiator. Yeah. And most people aren't going to be interested in it. Like, you're going to have to turn down a lot of work because it's just going to be like, but if you find, if you're running a business and you find, $1 million worth of clients that are interested in it, you're the only one that can serve them, or, one of the very select that can.
Yeah.
So there are arguments to be made for, okay, let's try it this way. Let's do it completely different. I think it's funny. You look around, it's like every business is completely dependent on computers, which I get it. They're amazing.
Yeah.
For that, they're perfect. But
they can be,
they can be distracting.
They can like the tools can be so abundant and so efficient in a sense that you just overload yourself with digital clutter.
And what was the article you sent me where everybody's pulling from the same resources?
Yeah. God, what was that article? I'll have to see.
Essentially, the thesis was that everybody's pulling from the same the reservoir of ideas, so everything looks the same.
The same design language, basically.
Everybody just, when you want to design something new, you Google
coffee shop and you look at it, or
you look at 100.
How do I decorate my room for my Airbnb? And it's like, oh, white sheets and this thing. Like you just.
And so this is a way to almost work around that, where if you're not using a computer, you're not going to be influenced by what that's feeding you. If you're not using the internet for your design.
Well, and to me, if you're looking at objects from the past as well, and this is hauntology, right? We're tapping into the past to never sort of like, because we can't see a clear vision of a future. Like, what's a design that would look like it literally came from the future versus me looking at VHS covers or old typewriters and designing things based on what I like about these objects of the past.
It's interesting. Like you used to sit down for, maybe this isn't exactly true, but there was space to sit down and just think about what the future looked like for 10 days. And at least that's coming from your own, your own pathways of thought. It's coming from your own brain. Now there's not a lot of sitting down and just thinking about the future. Eventually you're going to break and you're going to search on the computer, like visions of the future, and you're going to create some, molded together version of all of these. Yeah.
A little Ralph McQuarrie, a little H.R. Geiger, a little Braun, industrial design, some Herman Miller. And now we've got,
throw it out.
Yeah.
And so, it's just, who's to say what the, I think it's an interesting way to, I'm trying to like, because I don't want to, I don't want to be like, hey, that's clearly the wrong way to do it. I don't think it is. I think there's a reason that most people have adopted the newer way. Yeah. Just like, I think there's a reason most people have adopted digital cameras. Right. Film prices got expensive and all of a sudden all the people that shot digital looked a lot smarter. Like, I get it. There's trade-offs for everything, but I just want to, I stress that it's not the only way, and that some of the problems we run into, I think, could be solved by applying a different way of thinking. But let me ask you this really quick.
Yes, please do.
How important is, it seems like we're stepping away, but this is very related. How important is productivity, period? Question mark, I guess, but how important is productivity as an idea? And the reason we touched on that, you were talking about that in pre-show a little bit, so I wanted to get that in because it seems like your idea of this has changed over the last.
Well, you talked about like efficiency as a North Star, right? And I think people can put productivity as a North Star. Like as long as I got through 10 items on the to-do list today, I was productive.
And that's what I'm pulling from is you talking about how you used to use all these productivity apps and and yes, it does break from utility as the North Star, but.
And, don't get me wrong. Like when I did that, when I had really, and I wasn't like using Notion in some compelling, advanced way. It was really just a easier, simpler way to lay out more complex to-do lists, and a category and then sub items within that category of things I wanted to get done that day. And I had a really good run where I was very proud of my self-discipline and would really maximize my time. I would sit there and say to myself, maybe I wrapped up something and I had 30 minutes before I had to pick up my daughter at preschool, and I would say, your instinct is to just kind of screw off for the next 30 minutes, but what's something that you can get done that's on this to-do list in 30 minutes? And I would really challenge myself to do it. And so part of me, again, tremendous fulfillment and satisfaction in exacting the discipline to focus on being as productive as possible. And there's a sense of fulfillment from that. On the flip side, I felt like that focus on productivity at every turn, while it created increased output, I felt like the substance of what was being outputted, the fulfillment I had on the more artistic side of the spectrum was really declining. So I would feel like I was a good little worker. I was a good little entrepreneur. I'm that much closer to sort of achieving a level of productivity for the week that I could be really satisfied with, and it would get me good marks from this entrepreneur or that entrepreneur or whatever. But it felt like it too. A lot of that was for some sort of commercial result for the most part. This is going to get you closer to this goal because one more article for Medium and the money and this and that. But it was just, you get burnout from it. And I didn't necessarily get burnout, but I'm like, I'm feeling a little empty creatively here, but with so much focus on productivity. So again, we talked about on the show before, everything is going to, it's a pendulum. It swings back and forth. You're never in this perfect sense of balance and stasis where you're at this place of peace where productivity is not fluctuating and it's happening efficiently and you're not feeling burned out or whatever. And then your creative output and all that stuff is happening. It goes back and forth. So for me, the pendulum has definitely swung back more to the artistic creative, and I think I'm going to pay a little bit of a price for that on the commerce side, and I'm going to have to swing back, maybe not as far, on the productivity side to be like, you got to write 2 articles per month that you're excited to write artistically and creatively for Medium, but they're just not getting done. Or you need to get an extra member video done, or you need to get another module filmed in your course. Like, I'm going to have to embrace some elements of productivity, but just maybe not to the extent that I had in the past when it sacrificed a bit more artistic or creative fulfillment. Try to find a little bit more of a balance there.
Middle ground.
Yeah.
Do you think that, why do you think people tend to productivity as a North Star? Why do you think that is such a common?
Because I think culturally we have so much pressure on us to achieve success as us as a society measure success.
Yeah.
Big house, cars, college funds, flashy clothes, flashy accessories, consumer desire-based I was hoping you'd pick up on that. Consumer desire-based metrics of success. And I think trying to find for me, like, could you be okay with the house that you have? Yeah. Could you be okay if your car wasn't rusty? Could you be okay with having a 20-year-old car?
Yeah.
What things are you okay with that don't meet certain people's expectations of Matt's smart, Matt's a white dude, Matt's good looking, Matt's a YouTuber, but then the house and the car and the this and the that doesn't line up. There's a disconnect there. He's doing something wrong. He's not being productive.
Yeah.
To get the things that he should have. And part of me goes, while I do want to have some metrics of success, they need to be mine, which might be family trips or vacations. It might be more time outdoors. It might be more typewriters. It might be, I don't know, whatever it is. To understand what that is and not let social media, the media, all the influences that corporations have on us to be good little consumers and achieve the American dream, to let that make me focus primarily on productivity so I can impress a bunch of people I don't ultimately care about.
Yeah. I think that's what, when people lean into like flashy clothes or, flashy accessories, they're typically trying to
just
impress people that
be a douchebag.
Yeah. They're trying to like compensate for something.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I wrote about short and long-term benefits. Mm-hmm. This idea of like, if right underneath productivity and like misguided cultural, North Stars, I think we tend to over-index on short-term thinking.
Yep. Short-term versus
short-term benefits, short-term. Yeah. And I think that's a good way to contextualize this idea a little bit too. Like, you talked about when you were doing things and you were everything was digital, everything was optimized, everything was productive.
Macros,
you felt a little
shortcuts.
It worked a couple of months, and then you felt burnt out. So it worked great in the short term. Mm-hmm. Long term, not so much.
Yeah.
I think you hear about this with companies a lot too, where it's like, like, oh, look at our culture. Our culture is great. And, at the end of the day, though, people are just staring at a computer for, 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yep.
Sitting at a desk, and it catches up to everybody. Mm-hmm. So, where do you place short term and long term in this idea of, using shitty because they're more fun? It's like sometimes, maybe that's the cure to losing interest, is just, but it's more enjoyable.
Yeah.
There's a novelty to it every time I approach it. We're losing a lot of that with, the sterilization of these processes.
For me, I think I want to embrace the long-term approach, the long view of things as a life philosophy. And I want to use short-term thinking or a short-term plan or strategy as a tool to help me with the long view, the long approach.
What's a specific example of that?
Oh, that's... So long view is I want to find more ways to express myself through work as a photographer, and maybe even making video or some kind of video-based work. I don't know what it is or what it'll look like. Photography is much cleaner and simpler, whereas a video can get weird. It can be content, but then it could also be art, or it could be poetic and kind of eccentric and weird, or it could be a short film, something very straightforward and audiences can digest it. I want to find all of the avenues I can to express myself creatively and artistically. And I also want to use content creation as a way to earn a living, but still be artistically and creatively fulfilled, be helping primarily myself, not doing work that ultimately helps someone else achieve their goal. But short-term thinking that I might use is, okay, look, you're figuring something out with how you're going to achieve this long view, this long-term approach. And you want to screw around with old tech and typewriters and experimentation and kind of nuking the fridge here and blowing things up a little bit. Take a short-term thinking approach and don't really think too hard about it. If you feel it, buy that tool, experiment with it, tear up your studio, reorganize things, like let that impulsiveness and short-term thinking where you're not like really seeing, well, how's this going to play out? What's the cost of doing this? Because you feel safe in experimenting. You're not going to like go bankrupt. You're not going to, lose your housing. Your kids aren't going to go hungry. You're not going to do anything like that. But embrace that short-term thinking with this thing that's going to, once you figure it out and kind of see where the dust settles, it's going to help you achieve the long-term approach.
Yeah. I think too, just making sure you don't sabotage the long term.
Yeah.
With the short term.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's easy. I think that's the mistake. That's the hole a lot of people fall into is.
Yeah.
They're so focused on that beginning execution that they sabotage the.
Yep.
Or they have to.
Yeah.
Go back to the beginning and start from scratch almost.
Yeah. A lot of things that come up with me sometimes is like, I don't know if this is a thing. I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to help. Because I don't know, I want to find out. So, and the only way I can find out is if I do it, if I experience it. Because then I can create an emotional conclusion that lets me have peace. It lets me have a resolution. It lets me go, that there was no cheese down that tunnel. Let's move on. Let's go on to this thing.
It had been a golden afternoon. And I remember having the familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the sunrise.